visuals. This is a big event that we are bringing to you, a historic one at that. Tejas Mk1A. It's a 4.5 generation multi-role supersonic fighter jet developed indigenously by Hindustan Aeronautics Limited for the Indian Air Force. Right now we have joining us on the broadcast Manjeet Negi, who is in fact coming in live from Nashik, and Sandeep Unithan, who's also joining us. Good afternoon to both of you. Manjeet, I'll come to you first. Just take us through what exactly are you picking up from the ground right now as we see this historic upgrade in the Indian defense system.
देखिए, इस वक्त हम नासिक की मैं बात करूं तो यहाँ पर LCA Mk1A की जो पहली उड़ान है वो देख रहे हैं। इस वक्त रक्षा मंत्री खुद इस उड़ान को देख रहे हैं और ये महत्वपूर्ण, इसको हम डेवलपमेंट कह सकते हैं। ऑपरेशन सिंदूर के बाद जिस तरह के एयर ऑपरेशन की इंपॉर्टेंस बढ़ी है, चीन पाकिस्तान का गठबंधन बढ़ा है, चीन और पाकिस्तान 5th जनरेशन लड़ाकू विमान को लेकर गठबंधन कर रहे हैं। ऐसे में मैं LCA Mk1A की बात करूं तो ये 4.5 जनरेशन का लड़ाकू विमान है और पहली इसकी नासिक जो फैसिलिटी है, जहां पर इससे पहले बेंगलुरु में 2 फैसिलिटी HAL के पास थी जहां पर LCA बनता था और वायुसेना की तरफ से इस बात को लेकर सवाल भी उठाए जाते रहे थे कि जिस बड़ी मात्रा में उन्हें LCA और LCA Mk1, LCA Mk2 चाहिए वो नहीं बन पा रहे हैं और इसीलिए यहाँ पर नासिक में ये फैसिलिटी शुरू की गई है, जहां से पहला LCA Mk1A आज उड़ान भर रहा है और इसकी मारक क्षमता की बात करें 64 से 65% कहा जा रहा है कि इसमें स्वदेशी हथियार हैं, चाहे एयर टू एयर अस्त्रा मिसाइल की बात की जाए, एयर टू ग्राउंड मिसाइल की बात की जाए, लेजर गाइडेड बॉम्ब की बात की जाए तो और इस वक्त देश और दुनिया में जिस तरह के युद्ध के हालात हैं, ऐसे में अपने हथियार, अपने सिस्टम पर सेनाओं को भरोसा करना होगा और आज की जो उड़ान है वो भारतीय वायुसेना में स्क्वाड्रन की संख्या कम हो रही है, उस दिशा में भी महत्वपूर्ण कदम है।
जी मंजीत, आप हमारे साथ बने रहिए। Sandeep, I'll come to you next. You know, when we speak of Tejas, let's understand that how close are we for the Tejas to take over MiG-21 as the Indian Air Force's mainstay, because it's a big upgrade that we are speaking of in our defense system as well.
Well, Shreya, good morning to you firstly. And you know, the light combat aircraft Tejas from its inception in 1983 was meant to replace the MiG-21 on a 1:1 basis. The Indian Air Force operated between 600 and 800 MiG-21s, and the idea was that the LCA Tejas would, in the 2000s, in the early 2000s, gradually replace the MiGs as they exited the Indian Air Force. However, that has not happened for various reasons. You know, fighter development is a very complex process. There are many technologies to master and India is still getting there. We've still not developed our own indigenous fighter engine. We are on track to do that. It's taking us a couple of years. And the importance of this flight today and the handing over of the first Tejas Mk1A actually signifies a big vote of confidence in the government on its indigenous fighter engine, fighter jet program. And if you look at the numbers, they're all there for all to see. In 2021, the government ordered 83 Tejas Mk1As for something like 63,000 crore, 48,000 crore. And a second batch of Tejas Mk1As, 97 of them were ordered very recently in 2025 for about 63,000 crore. So that's a very large commitment by the government, in not only in terms of resources but also numbers to boost the Indian Air Force's falling squadron numbers using indigenous aircraft. So this is the government actually, you know, doubling down on an indigenous aircraft program, committing itself to buying more of the Tejas. Of course, it has to come in time. These are a lot of aircraft that have now been ordered from Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. You're looking at the 3rd production line that's been set up in Nashik, and these have to deliver all of these aircraft, something like a 180 LCA Tejas Mk1As will have to be delivered from all of these three production lines over the next decade if the Indian Air Force is to get the squadron numbers that it needs, 40 plus squadrons. The Indian Air Force, Shreya, today is the smallest Indian Air Force in terms of squadron numbers since the 1962 war with China. That's a very small Air Force. You're talking of less than 30 fighter squadrons against a sanctioned number of over 42 fighter squadrons. So the Indian Air Force badly needs aircraft like the LCA Tejas Mk1As to come online in numbers and in good time. HAL has promised to deliver something like 16 and 18 aircraft every year from all of these three production lines. These are not going to be enough. They'll have to increase these numbers to something like over 20 aircraft, if that is possible, if the Air Force has to build up its numbers by 2035, Shreya.
Right, Sandeep. Sandeep, I'll just come back to you. I'll just next go back to Manjeet, who is currently in Nashik as we speak. Manjeet, आपसे पूछना चाहूँगी, हम जब तेजस की बात कर रहे हैं, आत्मनिर्भरता का जो गोल है इंडिया का, वो डिफेंस सिस्टम में भी हम देख रहे हैं अब. तो अगर हम तेजस MK1A के बारे में बोले, तो अगर आप ये बता सकते हैं हमें कि ये जो इंडिजिनस कंपोनेंट की बात कर रहे हैं हम, 64% ये एयरक्राफ्ट यहाँ बनाया गया है, यहाँ असेंबल किया गया है, इसके बारे में अगर आप थोड़ी और जानकारी दे सकते हैं तो.
देखिए, ऑपरेशन सिंदूर के बाद इस बात का सेनाओं को इस बात का आभास हुआ कि स्वदेशी जो इंडिजिनाइजेशन है उस पर जोर जरूर देना होगा, चाहे मिसाइल हो, चाहे लड़ाकू विमान हो. और इसीलिए अब जो LCA तेजस Mk1A की हम बात कर रहे हैं, उसमें HAL का कहना है कि कोशिश की गई है कि 64 से 65% जो इंडिजिनाइजेशन है, हथियार हैं, चाहे एयर टू एयर मिसाइल अस्त्र की बात की जाए, एयर टू ग्राउंड मिसाइल की बात की जाए, उसका एयर रिफ्यूलिंग सिस्टम की बात की जाए, आईसा रडार की बात की जाए, तो ये तमाम ऐसे सिस्टम हैं जो उसकी जो इंडिजिनाइजेशन को दिखाते हैं. और आप देखें, ये पहला देश जो LCA Mk1 जहाज आज यहाँ पर पहली उड़ान भरी है, उसको गन यहाँ पर सल्यूट दिया जा रहा है. तो एक बड़ा कदम है इंडिजाइजेशन के मामले में, स्वदेशी के मामले में.
जी बिल्कुल मंजीत, आपके पास हम आते रहेंगे फॉर द लेटेस्ट डेवलपमेंट्स. एंड व्यूअर्स, एज यू कैन सी, दिस इज a salute that's being given to this very Tejas Mk1A as it's completed its maiden flight in Nashik, Maharashtra, and we can see Defense Minister Rajnath Singh in fact unveiling this big boost, this big upgrade to the Indian Air Force that we are speaking about. Sandeep, I'll want to come back to you at this point. You know, when we speak of Tejas, as you were also pointing out, there have been certain delays and there have been certain concerns that's also plagued the timeline in which Tejas was to be introduced in our Indian Air Force system, so defense system. So how are we looking at that, and would you say those concerns have been completely taken care of at this point?
Well, Shreya, the biggest problem in the LCA Tejas Mk1A is the fact that it uses an imported jet engine. The jet engine comes from an American company, GE. It's the GE 404, which powers the LCA Mk1A, and those deliveries have been delayed for various reasons. The Americans call it supply chain issues. We've not seen these kind of supply chain issues with our other partners who are in conflict, like the Russians, for instance. But be that as it may, we are, completely dependent on the Americans for the LCA Tejas Mk1A jet engines, because our indigenous Kaveri engine has still not been developed. It's still in, it is in a advanced stage of development, but it will not power the current range of aircraft that we have. But that is the biggest worry, really. And, the aircraft cannot be delivered by HAL quickly enough because the engines aren't coming there, on speed. There are various other reasons as well for the slow delivery, but the primary one is the slow delivery of jet engines from GE. Now, there are various reasons for this, as I mentioned, but the fact is that the program has fallen, it has been delayed by several years, and this is something that should have come a long time ago. The Tejas Mk1A, in fact, I must mention, Shreya is the brainchild of the late Defense Minister Manohar Parrikar, who actually got the Air Force to, accept a variant of the fighter which was not Mark II. The Indian Air Force wanted a Mark II of the Tejas because they were not happy with the Mark I. Parrikar actually asked them to take the Mk1A. So it's only fitting that you have Defense Minister Rajnath Singh there today at Nashik to take the late Manohar Parrikar's legacy forward and demonstrate the commitment of the government of India to take this very critical indigenous fighter jet program forward, which is the LCA Tejas Mk1A. And then look at the numbers. There are 180 of them that have been ordered by the government, and despite all of this, the government is willing to take the delays, the geopolitical tensions that we have with the United States, all of that, because it believes that this is the aircraft that we must buy in large numbers. Because really, Shreya, the Tejas is actually the building block for a very big program of completely indigenizing our fighter jet fleets. Now, fighter jets are the most important part of an Indian Air Force, any Air Force for that matter. And we cannot have imported fighter jets. We can't have imported fighter jet engines, as we've seen recently. So the Tejas is the building block of a very large ecosystem of indigenous fighter jet programs, which will go on to the Tejas Mark II, and simultaneously you will have the advanced medium combat aircraft. So these were all to be implemented in phases. Phase 1 was the Mark I, Phase 2 was the Mark II, and then finally the fifth generation advanced medium combat aircraft. So this is really the building block of this very large, ambitious program to ensure that the Indian Air Force flies and fights with indigenous fighter jet engine technology, fighter jet technology.
Just stay with us. मंजीत, आपके पास वापस आना चाहूँगी. मंजीत, अगर हम तेजस MK1A जो रिप्लेस कर रही है MiG-21 रिटायर करने के बाद जो गैप फिल कर रही है, उसकी अगर हम बात करें तो अगर आप हमें थोड़ा फीचर्स भी समझा सकते हैं कि कैसा गैप ये जो एयरक्राफ्ट है ये फिल करेगा. MiG-21 हैविंग रिटायर्ड आफ्टर decades of services in the Indian Air Force, and अभी ये जो तेजस MK1A का हम बात कर रहे हैं, इसके फीचर्स की बात करें, कैसे ये उस गैप को फिल करेगी?
देखिए, इस गैप को पूरा करना एक बड़ा चैलेंज जरूर है, क्योंकि अभी हम LCA और LCA Mk1A की बात करें, LCA 2 की बात करनी है, फिर एमका की तरफ हम बढ़ेंगे. और नंबर से एक बड़ा चैलेंज है HAL के लिए, भारतीय वायुसेना के लिए, क्योंकि अभी करीब 180 से ज्यादा जो लड़ाकू विमान है LCA Mk1A, LCA Mark II, वो उनकी डिलीवरी होनी है. और इसीलिए प्रोडक्शन एक बड़ा चैलेंज है, उसके सिस्टम एक बड़ा चैलेंज है. और इसीलिए अब उम्मीद जरूर की जा सकती है कि जब नासिक में जो तीसरी फैसिलिटी HAL ने तैयार की है, जहां पर उनका दावा है कि वो 8 से 10 विमान सालाना बना पाएंगे, तीनों फैसिलिटी में अलग अलग एक तरह से 30 विमान साल के बना पाएंगे. लेकिन अभी भी अगर हम बाकी देशों के बात करें, कंटेम्प्रेरी हमारे आसपास के जो देश हैं, चीन, पाकिस्तान के मुकाबले वो 5th जनरेशन की तरफ बढ़ रहे हैं. ऐसे में अभी क्योंकि भारतीय वायुसेना की जो स्क्वाड्रन की संख्या कम हो रही है, हाल में 2 बाइसन जो लड़ाकू विमान हैं वो फेज आउट हुए हैं, और उसके बाद हमें अभी उनकी कमी को पूरा करना है. स्क्वाड्रन की संख्या कम हो रही है. LCA Mk1A की बात करूं, जो मेरे सामने एक खड़ा है, जिसने पहली उड़ान भरी है, वो 4 पॉइंट जनरेशन का लड़ाकू विमान है. उसकी मारक क्षमता उस तरह की है. और लेकिन अब अगर इसके नंबर बढ़ते हैं और LCA Mark II और एमका की तरफ HAL तेजी के साथ बढ़ता है, तो वो गैप आने वाले दिनों में जरूर कम हो सकता है, लेकिन अभी भी एक बड़ा चैलेंज है.
जी मंजीत, हमें ये सारी जानकारी देने के लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. Well viewers, that's what we are picking up from Nashik at this given point as we bring you these visuals from there of the first flight that Tejas Mk1A has made today. I'd go back to Sandeep here. Sandeep, we've had this conversation before with regards to indigenous, making our defense system more and more indigenous, and usually the focus would mostly be on assembling them in India rather than making them in India. But this would mark the first such project wherein majority of this entire aircraft has been made in India. And that also brings in a point of a big vote of endorsement from HAL that attributes for the AMCA project. What would you have to say on that?
Well, Shreya, this is, as you correctly mentioned, this is something that we are doing for the first time after a very long time. I must say that we had a fighter program in the 1960s called the Hindustan Fighter 24, Marut. It was called the Marut in the 1960s. It was a very advanced program for its time, which was in production until the 1970s. And for various reasons, including the engine, it did not have a proper jet engine. We hadn't developed our own engine at that time. That is the reason that the Air Force decided to retire the Marut. So it is, in a sense, with the LCA program, we are coming back to where we left the Marut almost half a century ago. 50 years is a long time. So we are having to learn this entire thing of developing an aircraft design all by ourselves, by getting the components, creating the ecosystem, the indigenous domestic ecosystem that will, create these production lines that will allow these production lines to deliver aircraft at a steady rate. And that is a technology that we have to master. This is something that you will have to learn by yourself. As you mentioned, we were in the phase of assembling aircraft. Now, Nashik is very important from that perspective, because this is where the Indian Air Force was, HAL, in fact, was the assembling a lot of Russian origin aircraft for the Indian Air Force. They were building MiG-21s there until the 1980s. They built MiG-27s over there. And until recently, they were building the Sukhoi 30 Mk1A MKIs for the Indian Air Force. Now, the Sukhoi 30 production line was the last such assembly line that HAL ran over there. They are literally down to their last few Su-30s. After that, the idea was to shift to another imported aircraft design. They were
right, Sandeep. Right.
The AMCA. Now it has been switched over to the LCA Tejas.
So it's an important start for sure. It's an important and a successful start for sure. One that we'll keep a close tab of. But yes, definitely a mark of Atmanirbhar defense system for this country, which in fact is our focus and continues to be our focus. Viewers, quickly shifting our focus now. This is with regards to the state of war Bihar. Now, key NDA huddle in state of war Bihar that we bring to you. Updates on Home Minister Amit Shah meets Nitish ahead of nomination. This is the big update that we are bringing to you, and visuals that we are bringing to you. A key meeting. Remember, only yesterday in an exclusive conversation with India Today, Amit Shah clearly mentioned that while Chief Minister